Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, and since 2016, Monica Shimonik has been coaching moms and dads as they navigate through the treacherous waters of the family law racket. Aside from workshops, which helps with specific problems, her 12-week signature course, The Best Interest of the Parent, uses a 4-quadrant model to create a robust healing and empowerment system so that you control the narrative in your life, not the state. Use coupon code SLAMTHEGAVEL to get 10% off her course, and that will be in the podcast notes. I have a very great guest here today. His name is Steve Wade. He is a family law specialist. He quotes it's a sad reality that sometimes relationships end, sometimes in bitter, acrimonious divorce, which gets even more complicated when there are children involved. As we all know, law plays a massive part in how these situations are resolved. However, it's not just the law. There is more to it than that. Mindset and empowerment can tilt things in your favor by how you act and how you think. Stephen Wade is one of the co-founders of the Family Law Assistant franchise, a growing new breed of legal practitioners who help people represent themselves in the family courts using a mix of legal knowledge and coaching techniques. So I totally welcome you, Stephen Wade, to the show. And we have a lot to learn from you and talk about being a family law specialist and how you work.
Hello.
Glad to have you on.
Likewise.
So how did you get into this area of work?
Okay, in short, it was personal experience. I came home about 15 years ago to an empty house, minus my then wife and my son. And I thought, like many parents, that I was a good guy. I would just explain the situation and I would play a meaningful part in my son's life. And as I got involved more and more with the family courts, I realized that wasn't the case. It got compounded when I realized that my own legal professional, who I was employing and paying, I think, about £250 an hour plus to assist me, I realized wasn't as interested in me playing a part in my son's life as I was. So I fired her before the first hearing, represented myself, took part in a court case that lasted 5 years and resulted in moving from just outside London to the mountains of Wales. And eventually I ended up setting up my business, Family Law Assistance, to help other parents going through similar situations.
That's a tremendous amount of work. And you actually followed your son to where he is at so you can see him.
That's right. I mean, I'm from the southeast. My son's mother's from the southeast. She's from London. And she just decided that she had a burning desire to move 300 miles away to one of the most isolated parts of the UK. And of course, it completely affected my life. I had a corporate lifestyle. I worked in London. I worked for various blue chip companies, world leading companies. And suddenly I'm in rural Wales where if you're a farmer, unless you're a farmer, you're going to be kind of struggling for work.
Oh, geez. Yeah. So, how many people work in your firm?
Okay, so at the moment, there's myself and my partner and wife, Michaela. We currently have 5 franchisees dotted around England and Wales, and we're looking for more at this stage. We've got, the way it works in the UK is there are separate jurisdictions. England and Wales is one jurisdiction, so that's that's a particular area of law. That's what we specialise. Scotland and Northern Ireland have different areas of law. So, yeah, we cover the whole of England and Wales. 5 people at the moment.
That's a lot of franchises, I think, for England, because England is a rather small country, but a very powerful one indeed. But this is just really great. You're doing this for people, and with your clients, you just guide them on representing themselves.
Yeah, I mean, there are the rules about what we can and can't do as legal assistants are quite strict. We're not solicitors, we're not barristers, so we don't have an automatic rights of audience. We cannot litigate on people's behalf, but we can do things like provide quiet assistance and take notes and help with paperwork. And we're usually with people just about every situation they're going to be in, aside from when they're on the stand. a large part of it is actually mindset and just getting people to look at things, in a different way, in a child-focused way if it's a child case, and to look at things big picture. And of course, with a quiet voice in the background to give them a little bit of perspective, and sometimes kick them under the table if they're saying something they shouldn't do in calls.
Like, do you offer also like a counseling service within your practice?
Now, no, it's funny, but no, I'm an NLP practitioner. Michaela, my wife, she's actually a master practitioner trainer. So coaching is an element to this side of stuff to get people to, to, like I say, to focus and to be clear about what their goals are. Do you know, it's easy when you're in a court case to feel that the world is against you,
Mhm.
the court system. And I'm sure it's a familiar view that many listeners to this podcast have got, but it can make a big difference if you realize a few key facts to make your life as easy as possible. Life is hard when it comes to a court system, for a court case. It doesn't have to be as hard as you perhaps sometimes think. And you can do a lot. You've got more power than you probably realize.
Mhm. I think some people don't realize that. I mean, it's very scary when you get court orders in the mail. Some people are even afraid to go to the mailbox, at least I was.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I remember for a long time that when I got home from work, the first thing I would do is I'd open my front door, and also we don't have mailboxes here; we have letter boxes. Open my door and see if there are any letters waiting for me. And I remember opening the letter, slamming the door shut, ripping the letter open, and there's often with my hands shaking and
Mhm.
thinking, "My God, what is going to be landed on me today?" And yeah, it's a fear is a thing. And you think about it, yeah, when you're dealing with something as emotional as your children, paradoxically, that's when you've got to be as calm as possible when it comes to a court situation. Because, if you react quite reasonably to some of the things that are done and said in court, i.e., anger or upset, it can and is used against you. So it's really important to actually make sure you're as clear as possible. You really don't want to be saying something that is going to be read out in court and used against you in a court hearing.
Yeah, some parents will say, if you cry, it's used against you. If you don't cry, it's used against you. It's like they pick out a target parent, and whatever you do, sometimes it just doesn't matter. You're a target. Have you seen that a lot?
Oh yeah, and it's something we actually do with our clients. Now we are quite protective to our clients. I've suggested that solicitors and barristers leave the consultation room that we're in prior to a hearing when they've attempted to bully or intimidate my clients. Part of it is explaining and framing things to my clients beforehand that we're going to speak to the other party's solicitor. That they might be trying to provoke a reaction. Now, don't get me wrong. I know lots of solicitors and barristers, both from a professional and a personal point of view. And one of the things that's always important to point out to people is that no matter what is being said to you, whatever you think about the solicitor or barrister is just a job for them. They don't
Mhm,
wake up in the morning thinking, how can I ruin this litigant's life? It's just a job for them.
mhm,
And that can make a big difference. Now, that's not to say that, that they'll wind up clients. I've seen a few barristers
mhm.
act very aggressively and to intimidate people. And when they get into court, they're nothing but courteous, or vice versa, just to get the reaction. It is just about a job for them. So when people are able to dissociate the facts that the barristers and solicitors, what they're saying is just their view, to win a court case, it can make a big difference. One of the questions, the slightly rhetorical questions I ask one of my clients is, what do you think your ex-partner's motivation is for criticizing you? The one that's paying them, the person who's being paid £250 an hour plus VAT. What could their possible motivation be for just trying to wind you up? They're being paid to do it. It's a job to them.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's a job to these, barristers, attorneys. They get paid at the end of the day, whether they win or lose.
Exactly.
And that's why, I mean, I chose to represent myself, you chose to represent yourself, because at least we're not throwing money out the door.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I know some people will attack solicitors and barristers on the basis that they charge, but to use a court phrase, we are where we are. You know, there's nothing worse than two litigants in person in front of a judge, and I've seen this, where people wander off the topic and they just use the court as a springboard to launch personal attacks on each other. What I would say in the court's favour is a court referees the argument. Now, better still, it's if people avoid court in the first place and go to mediation. People often ask us, how much is it going to cost? And I responded, that depends on how difficult your ex-client is. Parents don't have to go to court if they agree. And while I'm aware that possession of children is 9/10 of the law, you've got the system in front of you that you've got. There's no getting around it for the time being. There are people that campaign to change the system. I got me. I'm yet to see a better system. And if I'm honest, I've been part of the campaigning. I've been part of a parenting charity here in the UK, and I think we're a long way off. And I think we're probably heading in the wrong direction, if I'm honest. Which is why I focus on helping people empower themselves to get the best possible result for their children. If people are keen on changing the system, the best thing they can do is actually, I don't know, do it by force of numbers. If it's your contention that we were talking about parental alienation, if it's your contention that parental alienation is an issue that needs to be addressed, and I know plenty of people do, then to actually deal with it in a one-to-one basis and to do it in their situation, to present it to the court, so that the court eventually sees that the way that the parents who have been alienated deals with it, they're able to deal with things in a better way. No, there's no easy answer here, I'm afraid. I wish there were. If it were, my own court case wouldn't have lasted 5 years.
Some people say, well, parental alienation is junk science. It doesn't exist. And I think, at least what I have seen in my situation, is that it does exist, and it's used in court it was used in court against me, and it's used in court against like domestic violence victims. And however, this does happen, but I think the family court also perpetuates the parental alienation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware that the critics of parental alienation say it's a syndrome used by abusive parents to perpetuate the abuse against their ex-partner. I'm sure there are people, and actually I do see examples where someone will say to me, my client, my ex-partner is alienating the children. And sometimes I think it's a matter of perspective, but I would say that parental alienation is most definitely a thing. It definitely exists. Do you know what? I don't know much in US law, but people often say to me in this country that the law in the UK needs to change. There is nothing wrong with the law. It's how it's interpreted is the problem. The court has all the tools to deal with parental alienation. Unfortunately, in England at least, not so much in Wales, parental alienation is an increasingly recognised syndrome. But let me give you a tip if you're facing parental alienation, and this is absolutely key. Do not use the term parental alienation. If you do that, firstly, you will be labelled as a nutter. It's as simple as that. There's another reason for this. The courts don't like people talking about syndromes. The courts don't like labelling it. In England and Wales, and I'm sure in many other jurisdictions, it's all about the best interest of the child. So if your ex-partner is doing something that is not in the best interest of your child, address that. If you can actually demonstrate that your ex-partner are doing 10 things and they all fit within the syndrome of parental alienation, great. You do not need to use the phrase parental alienation to get your point across. Some people say, I need to have my data say in court and to say it. Maybe you do. But then you just decide whether the outcome of a relationship with your children is more or less important than labelling your ex-partner a parental alienator.
Yeah, that was well said. I'm glad to see. Yeah, I agree. Because you want to show the court a pattern and not come out and say he's or she's doing parental alienation. You've got to show a pattern of what they're doing with this child. And then I don't know if, kids over there are being sequestered and the judge talks to them.
It doesn't happen much. It does get requested. In this UK, there's an organisation called CAFCAS. That's the Children and Family Court Advisory Service. See it as the social services department of the court system. A CAFCAS officer will speak to a children outside court because it's believed to be better. Now, CAFCAS does have its critics, and there are a lot of CAFCAS officers who probably very similar to the social services workers that we all know and love, will have their own personal interpretation of when it comes to parental alienation. like I say, in England at least, because Kafkas in England is different to Kafkas in Wales, parental alienation is increasingly recognised. However, it's also worth pointing out that Kafkas will fall back on one of the 7 points of the welfare checklist in this country, that the child's views are extremely important. And sometimes I think they over rely on the children's stated views. They will say the child doesn't want contact, what can you do? And I've seen that in court too.
Hmm. Yeah, they have to realize, you know, I just wish parents could step back and realize that these kids need to have a happy childhood. And even though a divorce is happening, stay out of the courts and mediate and realize, put the child first. And if there's money issues, work it out between yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, if you're divorcing your partner, not your children. And it's the worst of all outcomes with children. We all see in the stats about how children are more likely to have mental health issues, less
Mhm.
likely to have a relationship, more likely to end up in prison. And I think I read somewhere that the average age of a child who's alienated from a parent coming back is at the age of 26. I'm no, I can only conclude that there are some parents who hate their ex-partner more than love their own children.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that because they so want to get even with the ex that they will just neglect issues that we'll say that the other parent wants done as far as, like even physical issues like putting braces on the kids' teeth or, wisdom teeth removal. They will just not do it just to spite the ex.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's always worth thinking about what the motivation is, why people do these things, and it's firstly really important to realise that no one is the bad guy in their own books. That there's no. I don't think there are many people. I'm sure there are a few, and I'm sure people listening to say my ex is like this. I don't think there's many parents who rub their hands together and say, I'm gonna teach the kids to hate my ex." I'm sure most people believe that they're doing it for the best of all possible reasons. If you're an NLP fan, let's say a highest positive intention. There are not many people that do things because they're wicked. I think most people do things unthinkingly, which is arguably worse.
Mhm, mhm. And some parents do this, like you said, without knowing that they're doing this. And do you counsel them to, guide them on what to say, what not to say?
Yeah, like I said, we no, we've got a big part is we get our clients to stay as focused as possible. So, as we touched on earlier, we want people to, if an incident's referred to actually say why it's not child focused and come up with an alternative solution. So, let me give you an example. A birthday party. Let's imagine your child is with you and your ex-partner says they need to come to me now because they've got a birthday party to go to and they've got a choice between staying with you or going to their party. They can't do both. A way to do this would be to suggest to the other parent, well, why don't you give me the details of the party and I'll take them?
Mhm,
Because because the children need to learn that parents shouldn't be excluded from any part of their life at all.
mhm,
And that's one good way of doing it. Now, in this scenario, for example, with the birthday party scenario, what's best for the children? If your child has been invited for a birthday party and your ex has put you in a position where your child has a choice between spending time with you or going to a birthday party, what is the best course of scenario for the children? You can't change your ex's behavior, but you can change your own. In that
mhm,
scenario, what would you do? Would it be worth you saying to them, okay, I'm going to let them go to the birthday party? Or would it be spend time with you? That is a personal matter. But that's the thing. It's all about focus here.
mhm,
It's not relying on what your ex should be doing because quite frankly, you're not going to be able to control your ex. You probably know you never have been able to.
mhm, mhm. And some of these exes have personality disorders themselves, and they can be very difficult to work with.
Again, do you know? And I imagine I guess everyone is shouting the word narcissism at this stage. And this is one of my one of my bugbears, if I'm honest. In the same way that you shouldn't label people parental alienation, you shouldn't label your ex's mental health issues. You know, if, for example, narcissistic personality disorder is something that comes up all the time, and I get the feeling that people use the word narcissist in a way to medicalize that ex's behavior in a way it wasn't in the past. Maybe your ex is a narcissist, unless you are a qualified psychologist
Mhm.
and giving them a formal diagnosis and appointed by the court, and they're not your ex-partner. It's not going to go anywhere. Again, act in a child-focused way. If your ex-partner's mental health condition is doing something that is impacting your child's best interests, describe that. Don't turn up at court like some of my clients in the past with newspaper clippings and excerpts from books to show the court about narcissism. I have not once seen it actually impact their case in a positive manner. Describe the behavior, don't label it, and come up with a solution.
Right, right. And I mean, I'm not an attorney either, but I have always told people if they have questions, always say, it's my opinion, but I would show patterns.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Your child's
mhm,
best interests.
right. Document dates, times, what happened, and
Yeah,
explain it to the judge that way. And just don't, just don't say parental alienation because it will be used against you, unfortunately. Yes, it does exist. And these courts can perpetuate it. Even the opposing attorneys want to perpetuate it, and it's just making it harder for the child.
yeah. I mean, the courts here, they work in the best. The phrase they use is the best interests of the child, and they don't care about you. They don't
Mm,
care about parental alienation. They don't care about your ex's mental health condition. All they care is the best interest of the children. So if your ex's mental health issue is doing something that impinges on that, describe it. Describe an alternative. If your ex is alienating your child, describe it. Come up with an alternative solution. This will enable you to be purely focused on this. You like you say, labeling your ex or their behavior will never work out well.
mm-mm. And it just backfires on that parent,
Exactly.
and when it comes to other issues when the child wants to see the grandparents, I just don't think the grandparents should be withheld. They should know their family members.
Yeah, I mean, in the UK at least, grandparents are free to make an application for contact with their grandchildren. Often, we'll say to our clients, okay, we're going to focus purely on you because if your children are with you, they can see their grandparents, when they're with you, or when they're in your care, they can spend time with their grandparents. But it is an issue that grandparents often face. The court will say that the grandparents are a very important part of the children's life. And if you make a court application, it's all about the parent, but also their family. It's not just about mum or dad. It's all about mum and dad's family as well. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins. There's a whole half of there's a whole half of the children's heritage that's cut out when one parent is cut out.
Hmm. And grandparents are a big help, and I just like these parents that are squabbling, I think they should step back and say, hey, we actually have two sets of babysitters. you know I
Yeah,
mean, these grandparents are a great resource, and they're fun, and they can babysit at any time if there's like an emergency. They don't realize, like, what if you have to take one child to the ER and you could call up grandma and grandpa and they could come over and babysit the other three or whatever.
yeah, that's what happens in normal situations, isn't it? You'd think.
Right, right. And people can be normal. I just recently did a podcast on August 10th called Julie and Jim Talk About Co-Parenting, Blending Families, and Putting the Kids First. And none of us are perfect. But I
Yeah,
did a podcast with them, and they were amazing because at the oldest daughter's graduation, high school graduation party, the stepfather and her father were actually playing, was one of those games that you play. You throw a bean bag into I can't think of what they call it, but they were talking and having a beer together, and they've always gotten along, and
it,
it can be done.
and it's easy for people like me or you and our listeners to think that that our situation is normal. There are a large number of people that split with their ex and they work together and they all get along and they never go to court because they're reasonable adults that act in the best interest of the child, and it means the children have a great childhood. And it's easy, like I say, it's easy to forget because my experience of parenting is a personal experience. The personal experience is one where that is not the case. And all of my clients, that's not the case because they wouldn't be speaking to me if everything was fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know that the United States came out with a film called, oh geez, it was on parental alienation, and it was called, it was a film Ginger Gentile put out on families, and I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. This is embarrassing. um, Erasing Family. Hello, I'm such a ding dong. It's too early in the morning. Okay, so it was Erasing Family, and it talked about, you know, these kids that have been through the family courts and their experiences. And I think it should be shown in the schools. I don't know if this film has come over to you guys.
Quite possibly if it's on Netflix. I've not seen it though.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's, you know what, it's free on YouTube.
Okay.
And it's about maybe 40 minutes long, I think, but it was very fascinating. uh, I recommend everyone see it. Erasing Family by Ginger Gentile. But you know, and what this does to kids when there is fighting in court and erasing a parent, it's
Yeah.
just not it's just not a good thing to do to the other parent.
One of the things I said earlier, I mean, I think the law here in the UK is fine. I think what's wrong is the attitudes, and really the best solution will become when society changes, not when the law changes. Parental alienation is child abuse, and it should be seen in the context of being child abuse, and it should be, as unacceptable to perpetuate it as it is to perpetuate child abuse. Things will always stay the same until people believe differently. Now, contrary to what the public opinion, lawyers and judges are human beings and they're part of society. So if society gradually changes, their view is going to feed through. Law can always be interpreted in a way that you wouldn't expect or wouldn't wish. And I think there's nothing wrong with the law. And if there's any change, it's going to be through society and not through the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm waiting for society to change. And you know, there's so many groups out there, like on Facebook, and I don't know if you're on Facebook or not.
I am, yeah.
Well, how can people find you on Facebook?
If they if they search for Family Law Assistance HQ, they'll find our page. We often do videos. We're on YouTube. We're on various other channels. We do a lot of videos. We do, we provide various worksheets for parents and cheat sheets, to help people that represent themselves, or even if they've got a solicitor or lawyer, so they can actually make the best of the situation they find themselves in.
Mm-hmm. What is your YouTube channel?
It's once again, if you search for Family Law Assistance, you'll find it. It's actually quite a new venture for it, so you won't find us with a nice, convenient name at this stage.
Okay.
You need to search for Family Law Assistance.
That's good. When did you come up with all of those?
So we've been running for about 15 years now. No, it's just been during lockdown we started our franchise up, and we've been producing worksheets and videos for a few years now. Of course, like a lot of people, we were new to doing lives and doing YouTube videos, but we've got an increasing number now. We've also got our website, about 130 blog posts of various kinds. Some of them some of them are about mindsets, some of them about the law, some of them are a little bit tongue in cheek. I think I did a blog post once about how you could get a non-molestation rule against Santa Claus, based on Santa Claus is coming to town, to show that you could actually turn anything to a court case if you really want to. So yeah, and we have been accused in the past of not taking it 100% seriously because it's a very serious subject.
Definitely, it is. It's, I think maybe sometimes, when you're going through a divorce, parents will take it too seriously because they've got other people chirping in their ears about, well, you should do this. You should go after him or her for this. And they're making a mountain out of a molehill when, like you said, why not do mediation?
Yeah.
And
I mean, I
it's
get it. I get it that a court case could be for your children could be the worst time of your life. It was maybe I'm just projecting. It was for me.
mhm,
So I get it that it's something that is hard to find the humor in. Maybe I've got a very black sense of humor, a very dark sense of humor though, because even during the darkest days, I probably laughed at a few things that on hindsight probably weren't particularly funny. And I think that sometimes laughing is the only thing you can do because it's so ridiculous. I always expected during my court case a candid camera crew to come out with and say to me, Steve, you didn't really expect this was real, do you? No, this is so ridiculous. Come on, you should have realised this. But
mhm.
it was all true, and I don't think people realise just how insane a lot of it is until they experience it.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize what is going on in these family court rooms because, I would like to see video cameras and tamper-proof mics in all these courtrooms everywhere globally because this is a global problem.
Yeah. So I mean, the courts here are private, and that is something that people are very keen on. The court's been open, but once again, the court says, because it acts in the best interest of the child, it's really not worth a child watching their parents arguing in court 5 years down the line, across social media. And I can see the point, but also I think a lot of people hide behind it when it's perhaps not in the best interest of anyone.
Mhm, mhm. And I always tell parents not to put anything on social media during a case.
I have been that guy who's screen printed things and helped my client write cross-examination questions. I mean, you haven't lived until you've been to the High Court, been to the Royal Courts of Justice in London, and heard a High Court judge use four-letter words to read out the statement that you've prepared based on social media posts. The best
Mhm,
thing you can do with social media is not discuss your case and not even post social media at all, because if it can be misinterpreted by a hostile ex-partner or solicitor, it will be. The
mhm,
best case scenario is to remain utterly silent.
mhm,
And it doesn't matter how much you've locked your profile down or how
mhm,
careful you've been or anything like that. Someone will find it.
mhm.
And,
Oh,
it,
they
and,
have, yeah.
and sometimes that's been me.
Right, I mean, they actually have people sitting around trying to find what you're doing, and even if you've blocked people, they've got flying monkeys looking in on things, and it's ridiculous what they can dig up, even if you're not posting anything about the court case.
Yeah. That's because, and which is why I say that silence is
Mhm,
the absolute best scenario with this situation. And I always say to people, if you want to work out whether should you post this or not, imagine it being read out by the judge or by the
mhm.
other side's barrister. If you're not sure that they can use it, if they can use it against you, don't post it.
Right, right. I mean, I tell people, "Just post a picture of your cat. Look at my pretty cat today." I mean, and that's really just keep it to that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it happens all the time. In fact, I've got a blog post exactly about that. When you should post about your case on social media, and it will happen. It will
Mm,
happen. It will be used against you. And like I say, I've seen people turn a case which is ultimately winnable into something that is which is something which has gone down really badly because they've posted stuff on social media. There's no point going to court and saying all the right things only for the court to see you've said the opposite on social media.
yes, that's a good point. Yeah, when in doubt, just don't.
Exactly. Say nothing.
Right, right. Um, when people call you, do you, talk to them for a while? You probably recommend that they have a counselor on the side too as well?
It varies. Very often our clients represent themselves with our assistance. It's just us and them.
Mm,
2/3 of our clients, it's not a case they can't afford legal assistance, it's that they don't want it. They want to be able to represent themselves. No one knows your case quite like you do. No one cares either. And whilst we do have some clients that will use us to take the solicitor role, which is basically more the paperwork background thing, sometimes they'll take a barrister with them on the day to actually present their case when it comes to the actual court hearing itself. But yeah, most of the time it's just us and them.
mhm. So I mean, I guess what I was trying to say is that, like some parents, they're so distraught. They want to talk about, their emotions and, things like that. Like, do you recommend a counselor? Because, no attorney or barrister should be your counselor that you cry on.
We say to people, if people have got mental health issues, we
Mhm.
recommend they go and deal with them for the simple reason. Well, simple reason is one, it's better to sort it out than not, and secondly, it will show that you're engaging with things in a positive manner. You know what? You're right. No, no, we are not counsellors. We will meet our clients an hour before any hearing we take part, and we'll make sure that we run through the scenario and make sure they're prepared for it. But yeah, counselling is something else. If you've got issues that are actually going to affect your performance in your court case, you most definitely get them sorted out.
And you probably see parents with a lot of anxiety issues.
Yes, and once again, that's why we do a lot of prep with clients. A good question I always ask my client is before hearing it's like, okay, what does a win look like? What is it that that would be a good result for you? And most of them they say I don't know, and I say okay, right, we're going to reduce it to 1 or 2 points. As simple as that. These are the goals. This is what you say. We also help our clients put together paperwork. So, for example, in this country, one of the things we do is it's called a position statement. It's just a 2-page statement saying the background of the case, their concerns, and what they would like to happen. And so our clients are clear right at the very start, the details of their case. No, a court case is not a court hearing. A court hearing usually has got a particular function. A court hearing might be just to establish a fact. It might be to work out a way forward. It might be to let a court make a determination when two parents can't agree. When a client is clear about what a win looks like, what a court hearing is for, suddenly things get a lot easier for them. Now, of course, some clients are so anxious, and if that's the case, that's when we'll perhaps recommend that representing himself is not necessarily the best course of action.
Mhm. Yeah, some people can handle representing themselves, and some people just are not built for it.
Yeah, I used to puke on my way to hearings when I represented myself at start. So
Aw.
it's so that happened to me. So I'm well aware that how stressful it will be for people. But
Mm,
look, we adopt a very arm around the shoulder attitude to it.
mm,
We're human beings. We want to help people. We understand that that it can feel like the worst thing in the world. But like I say, it's all about framing. So, for example,
mm,
we say to clients, okay, let's imagine we go to a court hearing. What is the worst case scenario that could happen? And they will tell us. We'll say, okay, right, okay, well, that's unlikely to happen. These are the things that could happen at court hearings, because there's usually a few, you can usually predict the sort of outcomes. And we say,
mm.
okay, and all of them, we can handle it. You know, if you're in a court case, there are very few things you can't do something about. Your kids being adopted, that is one of them. But that is just about the only scenario where it's game over. In just about every other scenario, you can always fight another day if need be. Whether it's the right thing to do is a different matter, but you always can, and that usually calms people down. And I totally get the point. I remember during my court case, going into court and coming out with absolutely appalling results, and felt I'd been kicked around the courtroom. But at the same time, thinking, okay, well, in a few months' time, I'm going to head back in and I'm going to do the whole damn thing again, and I'll be fine with that.
Right. And it's like when a parent comes back and continues to fight, then they'll call that parent vexatious and litigious.
Yeah.
And then but it's like that parent is not doing multiple filings. They're not doing anything. They're just following the court documentation and what motions are served to them, and they answer them. But yet they're being called vexatious and litigious, which also causes a lot of anxiety in probably your clients as well.
Yeah, I think that's why this is where case management comes into it. I do see people putting in multiple applications where they've either got no chance of winning at all, or they're basically asking the court to revisit the same issue. That is seldom a good course of action. Most of the time, there is usually a different way of doing things. People don't often realize that there's a hard power and a soft power option with these things. The hard power thing would be a court application and a court order. Often with the soft power option, that's usually a better way of dealing with it. Like I say, we big picture this. If we work out with what people want to achieve, and unless your kids have been adopted, you can always go back to court for another day, or not go back to court and achieve the same sort of result. Let me give you an example. There was one client we assisted a few years back, a mother, and her children were with her ex-partner, and social services were heavily involved, and she'd gone back to court multiple times. One of the things that my partner dealt with realized that what she actually needed was a bit of coaching, for her personal life. And social services turned very positive towards her and her children with her. And it also sorted out lots of other issues with her life. And the coach, and she realized that going to court was possibly the worst possible action she could have taken. She got the results she wanted without going to court.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you never know how it's going to turn out. Have you ever seen, like a judge and an opposing attorney have a relationship and they're doing each other favors?
Now, do you know what? The thing is to realize is that a judge in a court in your town always sees the same solicitors or barristers. That's just the way it is. They're going to see each other on a daily basis. Chances are they're in the same network. They're going to know each other. That's not necessarily a problem. But so it can seem that your solicitor that you're paying a large amount of money to is very friendly with a judge. You know what? That's just a professional thing. Don't get me wrong. I've done the same thing myself. I know a few judges, and it means that it can be an upside or a downside to it. I wouldn't worry too much about that sort of stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times when it is inappropriate, but on the whole, I don't think that is a major problem. People are going to know each other. I've had people say to me before, what I need is a real bulldog of a lawyer. It's like, really? I'm all about soft power. Mm-hmm. If need be, I am happy to read someone the Riot Act. I am happy to be aggressive if that's what it takes, but that's always my last course of action. Mm-hmm. I prefer to speak softly and carry a big stick mentality. Mm-hmm. I'd rather achieve the right result for my client by consensus, by an amiable approach, by working together, rather than going for a slam dunk of an order imposed on someone. For the simple reason is, it's a great way for people to continue to hate each other after you've ripped each other apart in court. The best result when people talk to each other. I always say you only go to court if there are no other alternatives. Court should be the last resort.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah, it should be the last result. The thing is, you want to put your money towards your children and their needs and their college, university, instead of dumping it into lawyers. And
definitely. I mean, I suspect. I mean, we often get parents who have spent hundreds of thousands of pounds and lost everything. That's just the legal fees. They've lost businesses, lost houses. But this is why I advocate representing yourself. And this is why I advocate, like I say, an amiable approach and this sort of stuff. It's always worth remembering at the start, you cannot control what your ex-partner does or says. People seem to forget that. They think that if they hit their ex hard, they'll just crumble. Believe me, in the 14 or 15 years I've done this, people don't just crumble in court. If you hit them with a full frontal assault, what they're going to do, they're going to bunker down, and things are just going to get more and more hostile. What? You don't often get a silver bullet. It's about consensus. It's about moving things on. It's about being child focused and staying focused throughout.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about false accusations? Some parents will use false accusations in order to get their children away from the other parent.
Yeah. False accusations. They're a win-win situation if you're the one making them, aren't they? Mm-hmm. I mean, I always say to my clients, if you accuse of something that didn't happen, the easiest way to do it is to say, I refute the allegations. What will happen is typically my client will be the one who's making the application, and my client will typically be the one who's facing allegations. So if that happens, I ask my client the first thing, did it happen? And if the answer to that is no, then we'll say, okay, we're going to refute the allegations and move on and discuss why contact is in the best interest of the child. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be making an application to the court and spending the whole time rebutting your ex's allegations one by one, just so you can have your point in court, your time in court. Your ex-partner will happily spend all of the time talking about all the things they've said you've done.
Mm-hmm.
The court is aware that people make allegations all the time. Most of the time, if you look, but most of the time in my experience, if someone made an allegation, the court will at most ask the parent who's facing the allegations, did you do this? And if their partner says no, then the court will move on. If that's not the case, what we will do is there'll be a finding of fact, is where the allegations are listed, and then there's a trial that takes place to decide whether the allegations are, like the phrase they use, found or not found, not guilty
Mm-hmm.
or innocent, because we're talking civil courts here.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, to help our clients take control of the situation, is to actually say, okay, you've made these allegations, let's test them in a trial. You can explain in great details how these allegations happened, and it's amazing how many number of people back down when they're given an opportunity to explain those allegations in court in great detail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's scary when a parent hears it's, something that they have been lied on. They sometimes crumble up in a ball and they're just sick to their stomach.
Yeah, exactly. And I was one of them for many years.
Mm-hmm.
I think the real secret that I teach people, and it's something I faced, is that my life got a lot easier when I stopped caring what my ex-partner thought. That was a big thing. I used to spend ages thinking, okay, well, I've got to explain why this didn't happen. I've got to explain how that happened, and I got to convince people. And I later realised that what my ex-partner thought in terms of a court case were by and large irrelevant. So now I say to people to help reframe things. If your ex-partner says you did something, you just say, I refute the allegation. Now
Mm-hmm.
let's move back on to discussing why my child needs a relationship with me. Don't give false allegations airtime.
Oh, that's I like that statement. Right.
Control the
Oh,
narrative.
mm-hmm. Now, what do you do if that you have, well, is it Kafkas involved in that? And
Yep.
they're, say, backing it, and does the parent have to fight with them as well?
Okay, so Kafkas, what their role is to be the eyes and ears of the court outside the courtroom. They will typically conduct it's called a welfare check. They'll basically interview both parents and speak to the child, and then make recommendations on that basis. And their recommendations, the court doesn't have to take the recommendations, but the court often does. When it comes to a court case where there's Kafkas, the Kafkas officer is on hand to be examined, cross-examined, along with any other witnesses at a case. So yeah, I mean, Kafkas does take the side sometimes. Kafkas are accused by parents of basically siding with false allegations. I've also seen the reverse, but again, I would say to anyone that's faced with, well, I won't say to everyone, I'll say to a number of parents that are faced with allegations that they believe to be false, to say, okay, I want these investigated fully in the court. Let's have a trial. Let's have a hearing where my ex-partner details all the allegations they've made against me. And then basically we'll put it to trial and test their evidence. Now, it's also worth pointing out that sometimes, well, a lot of the time, let's imagine a worst case scenario where allegations have been found against you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the best course of action is?
Mm-hmm.
To engage fully with the court and move on from it. Mm-hmm. Draw a line under it. So, for example, let's imagine that your ex-partner has accused you of committing domestic abuse. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. Let's imagine that the court's remedy to this is that you go on a perpetrators program. Let's imagine that the court has asked for you to have insight into this. So what you do is you engage fully. Think about what the court's accused you of. There is no point arguing with the court. Let's imagine a scenario where you know for a fact it didn't happen, but yet it's been found against you. Perhaps you'll think to yourself, I'm going to keep fighting. For the court, it's a done deal. It's going to go nowhere. I've seen courts say there is going to be no progress made to contact until Mr. or Mrs. Smith shows insight into this situation. You need to make a choice at this stage. Is proving the fact you're innocent more or less important than contact to your children? Mm. And there's no easy way of swallowing this sometimes, but that's where focus comes into it. People sometimes say to me, I will do anything for my children. And I will say, that's great. Would you be nice to your ex-partner? and they will say, it's like, okay, so let's be clear about what your main goal is here.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
I'm not saying it's an easy option. And the phrase I'll often get told is, "It's easy for you." No, it's not. I've been there. I've done it. I've decided that my son's relationship with me was a priority here, second to everything else.
Mm-hmm. I think more people need to realize that, and it's good you're doing all this, and you have 5 franchises all over the
Yeah,
UK.
we have 5. We've got some in the north of England, up in Lancashire. We've got a lady just north of London, and another one in Wiltshire. Yeah, we're looking for more. Ultimately, we're aiming for about 50. But we'll settle for 12 by the end of the year.
That's excellent. No, that's excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Do you know, I'd say that, the biggest thing to remember is you're not beaten until you give up. So many people say, I had no choice. Believe me, there is always a choice. Now, I'm not saying sometimes the choice is not a difficult one, because there are often 2 choices, and it's your job to pick the least worst one. But there is always a choice. Realize you've got the power. Realize that you're not beaten until you give up. If you walk away, it's because you've chosen to walk away. Now, sometimes it may, in some situations, that may be the best thing for your children. But either way, it's a choice. And either way, own that choice.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's excellently well said. I'm so glad to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And, I'd like to have you on as a return guest, or, even one of your other um, family law specialists. That would be
Yeah, excellent.
fine too, if you would like.
Yeah, you'll hear a different perspective, because this is the funny thing. There's that I've got my own view on things. Michaela, my wife, my partner, I say wife and business partner, she's got her own different view on it, and she tends to take more of a hands-on view of the cases. I prefer to be doing the paperwork, sit in the background. She's the one who's the expert of being in court. I've seen her achieve miracles in
Mm.
court. She's quick-witted. She can be sharp-tongued. She's also a master practitioner at NLP. I think I think she'd be a great guest.
Oh yes, okay. She'll be my next victim.
I'll let her know.
So don't jump off, okay? Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again in the future with other exciting episodes. Thank you again, Stephen, for coming on.
No problem. It's been a pleasure.